Hi guys, this is Vika and you're watching Allgrants. We are digging into exciting stories of all the people around us who got scholarships. And today my guest is Elena Terekhova, the winner of the master level scholarship from the French government. She's currently working as an international relations manager and she lives in France. Hi Elena, thanks for coming on.
Hi, Vika, that's a great pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, I would like to start from the beginning, and I'd love you to tell us more about where you grew up, where you are coming from.
Yeah, to start from the beginning, right? We both actually come from a small city in Russia. I often explain to foreigners that this city is located somewhere between Moscow and Kazakhstan. To give you a bit of a geographic indication, because very often people would say, oh, is it Siberia, or is it the Ural Mountains, or is it St. Petersburg? Well, actually, it's neither. So this small city is populated at around 600,000 people, I guess, and this is where I grew up with a simple family from Russia. So I often say born and raised in Russia, made in Russia if you want. And this is also the place where I spent my years schooling and my 5 years at university, the first cycle of university in Russia being at the time when I started 5 years time.
Wow, welcome.
I did a bit of travel, after that, but I'm going to tell that later, yeah.
That sounds really exciting. And could you share more about how have you decided to study in France? Why France specifically? And how did you approach this process of selecting the program, selecting the university?
Yeah. Well, France, France has been a bit with me from my early adolescent age when I was studying a bit of French in my school because I was a specialized school with foreign languages emphasis. And I studied a bit of French, but it was never serious. When I was in my 4th year of studies at university, there was a possibility to go to France with a sort of a very short-term scholarship for 1 month language study in France. And I was keen on traveling those days. I was just grabbing any opportunity to have some sort of, as I called it, educational tourism, because I had limited opportunity to travel really, for leisure. So I thought I would combine some studies and some leisure and some trips and fun. So what I did, I applied for sort of this small scholarship to go to France for 1 month. And then I went there and it was marvelous. You can just imagine a small city of Montpellier, which is the south of France, and I was there drinking rosé, being free, imagining how life is beautiful really at this south coast of France, and it was really amazing. I thought, oh my God, I could never be able to really express myself freely in French. I will never be able to probably leave here, but it was still like at the back of my mind, a sort of a dream. And at the time, my French level was something like maybe B1, so it's lower than intermediate level. And I was having trouble really expressing myself. So I was sometimes switching into English because English was my first language. That was perfect, that was easy. And still, I met a couple of people who were like telling me, no, you should pursue. You should study French, you should speak French now, try it. And so I thought, okay, well, maybe I could. And then I went back to Russia and out of a sudden it was gray outside and it was my last year of university starting. And I thought, well, what should I do? Maybe I should apply to study in France. And then I thought, okay, let me not put all the eggs into one basket. So let me apply to different places to study, because if France doesn't work out, what shall I do? So I had this idea of studying abroad, and then I started applying. It was September of the year before I moved to France.
So does it mean it took you, like you started planning much earlier, like 1 year in advance? Is it the case?
Yeah, basically, yeah, 1 academic year if you want. So that, yeah, you start preparation more or less in September. that you can enter the university in September of the next year, because yeah, you should do lots of stuff. Of course, many of your viewers will know what it takes in terms of the preparation, so that you have all those different exams passed and certifications translated and recommendation letters and whatever else they want in the process.
Which other countries did you consider? You mentioned that France was not the only choice.
Yeah, that was definitely not the only one, because I was not 100% comfortable with French language to start with. So I applied to the UK. I also applied to a couple of Erasmus programs, which are 2 years Erasmus programs, not just the one where you do a 6 month exchange, but the 2-year full-fledged masters, where you do also lots of exchange in different European universities. So it was about Italy, the Czech Republic, I think there was Poland at a certain point of time. I mean, there was a variety of things. And in the end, it just turned out that, well, I had a couple of positive responses from different places. And they were offering me good conditions, let's say, even with scholarships. So I had multiple scholarships to choose from. But in the end, France was the one that I chose.
Wow, that's cool. Okay, talking about this specific scholarship, how do you actually pronounce it in French? Like, I can never pronounce that, but what's the actual name of that scholarship you got?
It's a Bourse du gouvernement français. It's the French government scholarship.
Cool. Could you share more about this scholarship? What does it provide? Is it only for
So
Russian
it depends.
students?
Yeah, let me give you probably a broader overview of this initiative, as it's the initiative of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of France, which is actually rolled out in many countries, in most of the countries where the French consider it's good to have a bit of their diplomacy and presence. And Russia is one of them, but really it's something like around 150 countries where they roll out this program. And generally, it is available via the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, so the consulate or the embassy of France in your country. Like, I don't know, you're an Indian citizen, your scholarship will be rolled out by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So you will be in touch with the Embassy of France in India, and it will be them who will make a sort of a final selection in terms of the candidates who they will pick up. But that's just the scholarship part, right? There is also the studies part, because if you want a scholarship, you want also to have your place at university, correct? So actually, there is another platform which is called Campus France, and that's also an initiative that's rolled out in, I think, in all the countries of the world, where you can apply via an online system, so that your documents are directed to certain French universities or high schools, and they do a sort of pre-selection of your documents as well. And first, yeah, you do your place at university, and then you apply also more or less in parallel for the scholarship. But that's a condition, of course. I mean, if you don't have your place at university, you will not get the scholarship. That's about the whole story of this scholarship per se.
And what was the language requirement for the scholarship? Like, I'm not very familiar with the French system, so I will rely on your expertise here. But like, can you go and study, let's say, to France, but study in English and get that scholarship? Or is it only for those who are going to study in French?
This is pretty much, I mean, interesting. In some cases, I guess you could study in English, but this is a very limited number of cases where France needs professionals. And also, I mean, the level of French still should be there, not necessarily like the super high level, but for technical kind of domains, you probably have a requirement that is lower than for humanitarian sciences and culture and anything related. So yeah, the requirement of the French language is there, because otherwise I think they would never roll out this type of program. It's also for the promotion of la francophonie. which is smart, right? to make the students all over the world study French, which is still one of the languages most studied in the world. And there is a requirement for the scholarship specifically, but when it comes to university, there are some programs run in English. Although still anyone knowing France and how things function in France would tell you that French is always priority number one and the most used language.
So at that level, when you at that time when you applied, what was your level of French? Was it B1 as you mentioned, or was it? Did you have to like raise it to B2 or even more advanced level?
Yeah. So we returned back to September of the year before, I guess. I'm back in Russia after that scholarship, that small study in summer in Montpellier, and it's a bit gray outside, and I have those great dilemmas in front of me. One is to get my English exam, which I think, okay, it's going to be fine, and to get my French certification, which is a bit like, okay, the minimum level that is requested for the scholarship and for the studies is B2. So something that I've not had before and something that I should work to. I thought, okay, well, listen, anyways, I just spent hours and days at the library of our university. I didn't go to courses really because I had no time for that anymore. I was spending my time studying really at the library. So in the end, I managed to get that the B2 level. It was not easy. It was a good kind of level and experience. And at the time also in my city, there was a possibility to pass that exam via the pedagogical university of our city. So there was a chance to not go to Moscow again with all those exams, international exams that generally take place in Moscow or in big cities. And we were two people who passed that exam at the time in French. So it was really funny, you know, like generally you imagine a classroom of 40 who are there to pass the exam and everyone is nervous. But then you imagine just two people in a huge classroom trying to pass that French exam. And that was really funny.
Wow, congratulations.
So it happened somehow.
Wow, it sounds challenging, but seems like it's possible. Well,
It definitely is. I mean, even for the person's never been into France so far, even for someone who has just started a couple of years, because really my experience with French language was, seriously speaking, 3 years before I started. And I know some people who really did it in 2 years or even less. Oh, really? It's possible, but it depends on your motivation.
okay, and talking about the whole application process, right? So it definitely took you, it sounds like almost a year to apply, right? Could you talk a little bit more about, I don't know, like motivation, essay motivation, or maybe do they require other essays as well? Or what was the most challenging part for you other than the language tests?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, the application takes a bit of time, as we have discussed, because indeed they require lots of supporting documentation and also some bit of creativity, let's say, because for the Bourse du gouvernement français, there was the requirement to write a couple of essays. There was a question on projet professionnel, as they call it in France, which is something like your professional project. What would you like to do in the next 5 years? It's a bit about also career planning to a certain extent, because you will not just tell them, listen, I would like this scholarship because I want to benefit from some nice life in France and study the language and have fun. You just can't say that, right? The idea is to show how much your professional project will contribute to possibly development of relationships between your country and France, to possibly development of the French economy, if you want, to, I don't know, some maybe cultural exchange or whatever else you would like to do that will be beneficial to both yourself and in the long term, and also to France to a certain extent. How will you become an ambassador of the French culture if you want? Really, I mean, it can take different directions. There is no limit in terms of creativity or just telling them, you know, I will develop relationships between Russia and France. No, that's not exactly something I think that they're looking for. What they're looking for more is first that your professional project is something solid, so that it's not an invention out of the blue that you are just imagining, you know, without any prior research and without any idea about what's going to happen next. And second thing is your contribution to building good relationships and spreading the French culture around yourself, very simply on your citizenship level, if you want.
Wow.
So yeah, you also asked, I think, a question about motivation letters. About yeah, is there anything in particular you would like to know?
Yeah. So is that did they have this kind of a career plan, career project, right? Was it also a part of this motivational letter, or was it a separate essay?
There were separate essays. One was about the professional project, and the other was about general motivation. Why are you applying for this type of scholarship, and what would you like to do in the future? But I mean, in essence, the thing you needed to demonstrate in your professional project is first your university and how you would like to, why you would like to get to that type of university, because it's a master's program, right? So you have a certain background, and some of the people, they were even transitioning. I mean, you studied the psychology in Russia, that doesn't mean you would automatically go to study psychology in France. So it depends. Maybe you would choose something like applied sociology or journalism or whatever else. And the same, by the way, with engineers, because there was lots of also, you know, the scholarship was divided, I think, in equal parts between humanitarian people and more technical people. So they also had a chance to choose their specialization, and it was important to say in your motivation letter why you're doing that and what is the outcome. So what would you like to do in the nearest future as part of your career? So that was the part related to the professional project. And when it comes to the second motivation letter about your general, let's say, love for France and motivation to be there, that was more or less free. And yeah, I think it depends really on certain, maybe even personal circumstances. So I'm pretty sure that the responses that they got was anything.
I see. Did you reach out to any professor at your targeted universities, like maybe to gather some ideas for the projects, or do you think it's a good idea actually to do that?
Oh, listen, that's the question that hits my heart, because, you know, that's really funny. Indeed, that's a brilliant idea to do that. However, at the time when I was applying, that was completely not on my agenda. Why was that so? Like, the French universities and the professors at French universities was something quite unknown to me. I mean, I had no idea and no experience. I simply didn't think of the fact that I could really do that. That's one, you know. The second thing is that really the French public university is not something that you should probably aim at, really, because in France they have this system of private business schools. And if you want to do more things related to business, let's say marketing or business development or product or sales or anything related to customer facing roles, you should not go to university. That's you know, a big discovery. And if you want to do like, okay, international relations, well, maybe you can still go to university. But if you want to do anything related to business, go to a business school. And this is where you can really meet professors and talk to people and so on, because public universities in France, very often they are underfunded. You don't have really much motivation on behalf of the staff and of professors to be there and to help out some foreign students who would like to apply. That's not, you know, at least this has been the case at the time when I was applying, because also the French universities, they are free for everyone. Like that's why it's the system of public education for everyone. We often joke here that in France, socialism has become real, like on one hand. On the other hand, the problem is that the universities are understaffed. They don't have enough public funding. And that's why a couple of years ago, they have changed the system so that the foreign students are supposed now to pay a little bit more for their tuition fees, even at universities. Business school is another story because generally it costs a lot of money. So there is a certain entry barrier to everyone, and not all the foreign students can simply afford it. When it comes to scholarships, for example, they do not necessarily cover the tuition fees, which can be high. You know, from the business school, you have to still search for sources of funding somewhere else. You just can't rely on one scholarship. And very often, a scholarship can also be, let's say, a self-exclusive category. So they just give you one, and that's it. And then you have to figure out how to do all the rest. However, I don't think it's all feasible. Like it depends really on how much you want it and what kind of means you are ready to put together in order to get there. Very simply. But in my case, you know, I'm not particularly proud of myself in that period of time because I was not really well supported. I was not seeking for help. I was not mature enough, I think, very simply to be asking myself those types of questions. And my family had no experience, of course, in subjects of a kind. And my overall surrounding people, I mean, I've never had a circle of people who've ever done anything like that. So I made lots of mistakes. And yeah, right now I'm happy I did because it also allows me not to do them anymore in the future.
I see. So you mentioned an interesting point about the private schools, like business schools, right? So would this scholarship still cover the tuition, or like the total tuition, or
Yeah,
it would?
it depends. For engineering schools, there would be probably more of allowance, right? For business schools, they had a certain partial coverage. But the biggest value of the scholarship in the end was not the tuition fees, well, at least in my case, because I just did a university, a public university. In my case, the biggest help that happened with this scholarship was the lodging and the small, let's say, bursary and amount of money that they give you monthly, so that you can live happily during 1 year time without ever thinking of money, let's say. So yeah, in my case, that was it. And also the scholarship, there are two different types generally. They distribute one which covers all of your fees, all of your lodging, all of your expenses, and also your social coverage, which means your health insurance, your coverage of I think home insurance and stuff like that, on one hand. On the other hand, there is a second category which only covered different insurances. So it didn't cover any of the lodging and expenses. It did cover some of the university fees, not all of them, and the lodging and the life insurance and home insurance. So it depends really. I mean, what kind of package you finally get. Generally, those scholarships with the social coverage only, they are easier to reach because they're more available. But yeah, that doesn't give you still the security and let's say the headache off in terms of the money and expenses and how you will manage this year or these 2 years studying. Maybe also one important point that I didn't mention at the beginning is that master's program in France can be completed just in 1 year because you have formally 2 years of masters, but it depends into which year you are getting accepted. You can make a choice of being accepted into Masters 1, so it's the first year, or into Masters 2 directly, which is what I did because I already had 5 years of university behind me. So there was not really much sense, you know, enrolling into Masters 1 in order to do 2 years again. And that was one of the factors that made me choose France as well. Because I thought, okay, listen, just 1 more year of studies and then I'll be free and will be able to do whatever I want. So I thought 1 year will be enough. And that's how it happened. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know this fact about France. Did
Yeah.
you have to like verify your education in Russia, that it's at the same level as in France, or is it a hard process or?
Well, this process is done by this agency that I mentioned earlier, which is called Campus France. So like the centralized system of admission of foreign students into French universities. And this Campus France, it exists really in most of the countries of the world. So yeah, they do it, and I think they charge a small fee for that, but not a real big one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's kind of accessible because it also has the resources in your local language, once they are there. And they're pretty much well positioned in the country. In Russia, for example, Campus France, at the time when I applied, they had lots of offices. They even, not just in Moscow, even in the regions, so you could visit their offices and they were there to help you with the documents.
Oh, wow. That's good. Another point which I think was interesting, what you mentioned, is that it seems like you did not have a lot of people around you who were applying to similar programs. Like, how did you decide to apply? Like, what made you think like that you will get it? So I just want to understand your thinking a little bit more here.
Yeah, I wanted it very badly. That's probably the reason. I was not sure at all if I was gonna get it or not, but you never can know from the very beginning, right? You never can know if you're gonna get it, but if you don't try, you're sure you won't get it. That's the recipe. I mean, yeah, it sounds as a very big kind of step where no one is doing it but you're doing it. But in the end, if you want it, if you have this clear vision in terms of what you want for the future, it's fine. It doesn't look as scary as it is.
Cool. That sounds cool. And well, how many years have passed since you received the scholarship? A few, right?
Oh my God.
uh,
Ooh, it's 7 years.
Looking back, why do
Yeah.
you think you were the one who got that scholarship? Like, what's your secret? Why did they select you?
The selection criteria, this is really a good question because they're quite transparent when it comes to the French. They show lots of stuff on their website. You can read a lot. There was also at the time when I was applying a sort of a forum where you could ask questions, and there was a specific person from the embassy of France who was appointed to answer those questions. So really ask questions and they will tell you. Of course, they were not, going to give you some kind of personalized counseling in terms of what to do if I have this and that situation. No, that's not happening. But you should also, if you want to apply for scholarship programs, but really, if you want to do any kind of application, you should start trying to read behind the lines, right? You should first of all start to read carefully at least, right? Because that's the problem of 90% of candidates, even when it comes to job applications, not analyzing what they really want. The idea is to understand what they want, right? And to meet somehow those requirements while still keeping what you have in mind. It's like to marry the two. On one hand, there is something that is expected, and on the other hand is something that you expect. So how do you make those expectations meet? That's one of the probably the secrets, if you want. The second kind of secret or recommendation is to have the red thread. Very often in candidates who are submitting their CVs or their motivation letters, they are just compiling all of the different information about themselves, like on pieces of paper, and then you get those students who have a CV who has 5 pages of paper, and there is no real red thread coming throughout those motivation letters, CV, and other supporting documents. You're not going to tell them that you would like to excel in your studies if your previous academic transcript says you were always poor, in your country already. You're not going to tell them this, because there should be some sort of coherence between what you are saying, and what you would like to do in the future. That doesn't mean that if you have not excellent notes, you are going to be discouraged for your application. That just means that you have to justify what you did, why your academic results are maybe not as excellent as they could be. What's there behind? There should always be some sort of explanation and coherence between what you say and what you are.
Wow. Sounds like you, that's exactly what you did and what brought you there. Okay, and now let's just try to remember the moment once you got that scholarship and you moved to France, to the University of Nantes. Do I pronounce it correctly? Nantes, right?
Nantes. It's just Nantes.
Okay, the University of Nantes.
That's the French pronunciation. Oh my God.
Yeah. Like, how was it? How was it studying there? And if you could probably like highlight some key takeaways and learnings from that year, that would be cool.
Yeah, well, so the University of Nantes is just another story I think to tell. I don't know why I didn't land in Paris. I don't know why, really. I mean, I'm sometimes reconsidering all those choices and I'm thinking, why? But the University of Nantes was a nice experience. At the beginning, I just arrived, and when you arrive as a foreign student, you don't understand anything. And then you have to get into some kind of university lodging, like residences for students and so on. And you come there and everyone speaks French, no one speaks English, you forget it, okay? And then they're telling you, oh, listen, do you have your bank account? And you're telling them what? I don't have a bank account. So they're telling you, okay, go to the bank and get yourself a bank account. All right. You go into the bank, and at the bank they are telling you, listen, do you have your mobile number? And you're like, no, I don't have a mobile number yet. And they're telling you, okay, listen, go to the company with the mobile phones and they will give you an, okay. You go into the company with the mobile phones and they're telling you, what's your address? And you're like, I don't have an address. Because you're not admitted yet to the residence. And then you go to the insurance companies and they are like, what's your bank account? Are you kidding me, guys? I mean, really, it's about bank account, it's about insurances, it's about mobile number, it's about lodging, but you don't have anything out of this. And at a certain point of time, it has to be deblocked somehow. So, I mean, sometimes there are student associations that help the newcomers. So that's what happened to me, because I just went to the place where they were based, and then they were telling me what to do so that those people can still give me some kind of provisional paper that says that I'm provisionally accepted to some lodging place and whatever. In France, lots of questions are a question of paper. So you get those papers and then you can get the things moving. But at the very beginning, it takes you something like from 1 to 2 months to really get everything settled. And then you start also settling your questions of visas and stuff. So it takes you roughly 3 months, to, yeah.
Wow.
That was funny, yeah. But I mean, I think your question was more about the university and how was the learning process and so on. It was really different. I mean, the experience of culture that I wanted was really different. It was not what I expected, not at all. You always have some kind of misconception of what is going to happen, and it never happens in reality like this. But it was really rich. I mean, without this experience, I would not be able to integrate in France and I think to understand really how it all functions. So it was really, really interesting and beneficial. I was putting lots of pressure on myself, like many expats would probably understand here, in terms of the results, in terms of all those sorts of different things of understanding people, because at the beginning you just go to those student parties and then there is music playing loud and then someone is telling you something and you're like, okay, like, okay, I didn't get anything, but anyways, it's cool. Let's go on, and you feel really bad because it's just not happening. And then you have to figure out somehow how to live this new life without capacity to express yourself freely.
Sounds like a good experience, and you can really integrate into the culture better, right? If everybody around you speaks French, like you have no other option.
No, totally not.
I'm curious to know one more thing. Like, do you have a community of people, of scholars who received that French government scholarship? Uh,
Mhm.
does the French government like invite you to maybe share your experiences, or I don't know? Is there such a
Yeah.
community?
Yeah, well, there was an initiative of Campus France that was called France Alumni. So it was something that was like put together as a website, and they wanted to do something as a platform so that people could keep in touch. But I can't say this initiative was very successful so far. So this initiative was mostly, to get registered and then try to keep in touch. It's almost like LinkedIn, but for the people who were there as French students, first of all. Then when it comes to the scholarship holders, not really again, but they did one good thing, which was at the time when we were still scholarship recipients. They did some sorts of cultural outings. And I remember it was really funny when we went to the French cabaret, like the Moulin Rouge, and you're there with your students, right? And this is something that costs a lot of money, and generally it's like a luxury place where you get into those fancy sofas, red velvet sofas, and then you see those half-naked women and
Oh
you're
my!
like, what? It's a student outing or what? But it was really funny. And you get to meet those other scholarship people, and it was really good. I mean, I'm still keeping in touch with lots of people who had this scholarship, yeah, since those times. So yeah, those cultural outings, that was funny.
Wow, sounds like you had a lot of fun.
Yeah, come to France, you'll have lots of fun.
Cool. Okay, and well, now you're currently in France and you live in France, right?
Yeah, I do,
Um,
yeah.
can you share a little bit more what are you doing professionally, and especially share with us about your project?
Right, with pleasure. So I did a bit of a path here. So yeah, it's been almost 8 years that I'm in France, and at the beginning, after I finished my studies, I had a chance to have an internship opportunity at an international organization, and I loved it a lot. That's something I always wanted to do. Then I had a couple of years in organizational consulting, in leadership and management development. That was also an exciting personal development journey. And finally, a couple of years ago, I got a job as international relations manager at an international organization, which is also the rights holder for the biggest mega events in the world, which are World Horticultural Expos. Many of you might know about the World Expos, such as the one from Dubai, or the one that happened in 2015 in Milano. So the concept that we are having with our organization is the same kind of expo that lasts for 6 months, where governments participate in it, and which brings together different countries that construct pavilions and that participate for this period of time to greet around 6 million people. The difference with the World Expos and our expos is the green park, which we develop all around the place, because that's all about the value of green and promoting it to future generations. So I'm very excited about this job. That's really something that warms my heart up. But on the other hand, since I have this background as a leadership and management consultant, I've also not completely given up on this one, because that's something I would say my personal belief or my personal value in terms of people development, in terms of the fact that we are all able to do amazing things. How do we bring out this potential in ourselves? So what I did in early 2020, I started my project that's called My Way to Étincelle. And étincelle in French, it means sparkles. My
Wow.
way to sparkles, that means really like we should still be finding our way to sparkle in everyday life. And I centered this project around the development of careers, because we don't have a chance, a possibility not to sparkle in our careers that take so much time in our free time in our life. And I decided to be helping individuals to succeed in their careers via all of the different tools that I learned in consulting, via some career counseling advice, and even coaching aspects that I'm integrating into this project. Yeah, so it has a blog, it has a little course on career development, and I'm inviting everyone to join.
I'm going to share the link somewhere. Not sure where, but it's going to be somewhere
Thank
here.
you.
Please join and check Elena's project. Ask her anything about career development, right?
With pleasure.
Okay, Elena, I'm really, really happy to have you today. And your final words to those students, your final message to the students who are now thinking, shall I go and apply for that scholarship to go and study in France or not?
You definitely should. And the final word of mine will be, don't agree for less. Always go for more. You know, you might be thinking, oh, I can't do this or that, or maybe this is going to be too challenging. Forget it. Do what you want. If your heart is telling you you want to go to Paris, New York, London, wherever you want, Mumbai, you know, you should go. That's my only kind of advice. I would also say, you know, I should probably explain why it is so. In my early years, I was not as confident about the fact that I could do anything. So at a certain point of time, I was settling a little bit for less. I thought, okay, shall I go to Nantes so that life is going to be a little bit more calm and it's going to be probably a little bit more easier. And I was a bit afraid of going to Paris straight away. And then I understood, no, don't settle for less. You want really something different, and don't try to kind of dump yourself on the things you don't want. Really go for what your heart is calling for.
Wow, such a great advice. Thanks, Elena, and all the best. Guys, if you have any questions, please comment below, and I will ask Elena to follow up as well, and we'll get you the answers. Thank you. Thanks, Elena, and thanks everyone for watching. Bye.
Thank you, Victoria. That was a great chat. It was just amazing. Bye-bye, and hopefully you comment.
Yes.